On the 24th of March 2003, Sergeant Stephen Roberts of the 2nd Royal Tank Regiment was killed in action as a result of friendly fire. An investigation into his passing revealed that 3 days before his death, on the 21st of March 2003, one day into the invasion of Iraq, he was ordered to give up his enhanced combat body armour vest to another unit due to a shortage in the theatre. It was a tragic event that not only serves to highlight how ill-prepared the army was for Iraq, but it also shows the level of importance body armour has in 21st century warfare. But to understand the origins of the British Army's body armour systems, we need to go back 80 years to the Second World War, specifically to 1940, when the Medical Research Council began experimenting with designs for a body armour vest. After much testing, the council produced the M.R.C. body armour vest, which consisted of 3 1mm steel plates that protected the vital body parts of the wearer. After 2 years of field tests, over 500,000 were ordered, a number which was later reduced to only 200,000. Of the 200,000 produced, only 79,000 were issued, the vast majority of which were claimed by the RAF. The remaining 15,000 were given to the Army and were used for the first time in ground combat with the 6th Airborne Division during the Normandy landings in June 1944. Subsequent airborne landings at Arnhem and in Germany also utilised the M.R.C. vests, but when the war ended, they faded into the history books, and so did the British body armour programme. We now fast forward 25 years to August 1969, when British troops were deployed to the streets of Northern Ireland, and the Ministry of Defence was forced to revitalise the body armour programme in light of a deteriorating situation in the region. To supplement for the lack of body armour in British service, and to bridge the gap until the MOD issued one, America provided the British Army with 2 vests, the M52 and the M69 Fragmentation Jackets. Most sources suggest that these jackets entered service with the British Army in the early 1970s. However, there is evidence pointing to the M52 being available as early as October 1969, as we can see in this photo of British soldiers on duty in Belfast. When the M69 jacket entered British service is harder to distinguish, but as we can see from this photo of British troops in Belfast dated 1970, it certainly reached British hands at around the same time as the M52. Both jackets were virtually identical to each other, with both consisting of a Kevlar-lined olive green cover. On their sides were a series of laces which allowed for the wearer to tighten or enlarge the size of the jacket, depending on their requirements. Both were fastened together at the front through the use of a zip, which was covered over with an overlapping flap, and both had the addition of 2 pockets on the front. The predominant factors that set the two apart was that the M69, which was also termed the Mark I Fragmentation Jacket when in British service, had the addition of a collar for improved neck protection, and 2 pads on each shoulder to provide better gripping for the soldier's rifle when aiming. The arrival of the American M52 and the M69 Fragmentation Jackets provided the British with a placeholder whilst they designed and produced their own body armour vest, which came in the form of the improved Northern Ireland body armour in the 1980s. Also known as the Body Armour Mark II, the improved Northern Ireland body armour was designed to be worn underneath the combat jackets of the soldiers. Like its predecessors, the vest was a Kevlar-lined olive green cover, but what made it unique was the addition of 2 pouches, one on the front and one on the rear, which allowed for 2 armour plates to be added to the vest. The way that it was worn was that the wearer would first unzip the front pouch, before slipping the vest over their head and re-zipping the pouch back into position, before putting their combat jacket over the top. Eventually, however, the improved Northern Ireland body armour was reduced from a frontline roll, to make way for the 1989 Combat Body Armour Vest. The Combat Body Armour, also known as E.C.B.A, had its origins in 1985, when the Ministry of Defence began looking for a new body armour vest that could be used across the entire British Army. 4 years later, in 1989, the first Combat Body Armour vest began to be distributed to the units, with the troops of the 1st Armoured Division being the first to receive them in large quantities, during their deployment to Saudi Arabia following the Iraqi invasion of Kuwait in August 1990. The vest itself came in 2 parts, with a Kevlar liner sitting within inside a camouflage cover. This cover, which could be found in both woodland and desert DPM, contained 2 large pockets on the front and was secured to the wearer by attaching the front two overlapping Velcro strips together. On the sides were an additional two Velcro straps which allowed the person to adjust the size of their vest to their needs. Overall, the combat body armour vest can be considered at best an average piece of kit, with no protection offered to the wearer in the case of bullets. That being said, it was capable of withstanding shell fragments, which was proven to be the biggest cause of injury on the battlefield. According to a Times newspaper article published on the 18th of November 1985, 75% of injuries in battle are caused by flying fragments rather than direct hits. Modern body armour can stop up to 3/4 of these fragments. Nevertheless, the Ministry of Defence appreciated the need for a revised vest and began making immediate adjustments. These adjustments came in the form of the Enhanced Combat Body Armour Vest, also referred to as I.N.I.B.A. The Enhanced Combat Body Armour Vest was relatively the same to its predecessor, with the main difference being the addition of one large pocket on the front with an identical one on the back, similar in appearance to the I.N.I.B.A. The purpose of these two pockets was intended to provide added protection to the wearer's heart, and would have had two ballistic plates sat inside of them. Additional amendments that made their way into the I.N.I.B.A program were a toughening of the material was used to prevent the vest from wearing away under heavy use, and the addition of a rank slide on the front pocket. Issued from 1991 onwards, the Enhanced Combat Body Armour Vest eventually became a symbol of the Army's early deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan a decade later. Even today they are still in use with the British Army, although they have now been reduced strictly to training and non-frontline roles. Following the invasion of Iraq in 2003 and as the war in Afghanistan developed, improvised explosive devices became a prominent weapon used against British troops deployed to both theatres. The situation became so severe that the MOD began issuing the Kestrel body armour vest, which began to make its way into the frontline battalions around 2005 as an urgent operational requirement. The Kestrel vest, at first glance, looked very much the same to the I.N.I.B.A. However, the factors that differentiate the two programs was the addition of a collar for improved neck protection, two elbow-length sleeves for added arm protection, and improved pouches for holding the ballistic plates. This variation of body armour was issued in very small numbers, with the primary users being operators of the Snatch Land Rovers, which were a frequent target for IEDs. According to one report, between July 2004 and July 2006, almost half of the UK's fatalities from action, 20 of the 44 deaths, were personnel travelling in the Snatch Land Rover. The Kestrel body armour didn't come without its faults, however, with the biggest problem being the bulkiness of the vest, preventing the soldier from aiming his weapon. The problem became such that the Kestrel programme had to be abandoned early on, and replaced a year after issue by the new and improved Osprey body armour system. The Osprey body armour originated in 2006, when it was first issued to the troops deployed overseas. This first variation was known as the M.R.C. Osprey body armour vest, and it set the precedent for the next two designs. The vest itself came in two parts, both of which were lined with Kevlar and were attached together with buttons around the shoulders of the person. Once clipped together, Velcro straps near the waist are likewise attached to each other to firmly secure the vest to the wearer. Meanwhile, on the front and back of the vest are two large pouches, identical to the ones used on the Kestrel vests, which allow the armour system to hold two trauma plates for ballistic protection. Learning from the Kestrel programme, the Osprey system also utilised the addition of collar and arm protectors, which were attachable to the vest as and when the wearer required them to be used. Furthermore, Osprey vests were the first of their kind in the British Army to provide attachments for external ammunition, medical, canteen and grenade pouches, thus overcoming the problem of the armour preventing the soldier wearing their webbing system. Shortly after the introduction of the M.R.C., a revised version, known as the M.R.C. began making its way onto the field. The M.R.C. was practically identical to the M.R.C., although it now had the addition of a sling on the right-hand shoulder to allow for the wearer to attach their rifle to the vest. However, both the M.R.C. and M.R.C. Osprey vests received an array of criticism, which ranged from the systems conflicting with the M.R.C.'s helmet, and the wearer unable to properly fix his rifle to his shoulder when in a firefight. The introduction of the M.R.C. Osprey body armour vest sought to rectify the latter problem, by adding a piece of rough material on the right-hand shoulder to allow the butt of a rifle to grip with the vest. In addition, the side attachments were likewise improved upon, with the appearance of 2 clips on each side to firmly keep the Velcro straps locked together and the vest secure to the wearer. The Mark III became the mainstay for the Osprey body armour programme until 2010, when the British Army received new equipment under an urgent operational requirement, in the form of the Mark VII helmet and the Mark IV Osprey body armour vest. The Mark IV was a completely different design to the earlier Osprey vests, and was the first one to be issued in multi-terrain pattern. Whilst its shoulder and waist attachments were relatively the same to the others, with the use of buttons and Velcro, the way the trauma plates were inserted into the vest was revamped. Instead of having 2 large pouches on the exterior, the Mark IV had 2 pockets on the inside which the plates were inserted into, thus making them an integrated part of the armour system. On both shoulders were added 2 rubber mouldings to ease with fixing a rifle to the person, whilst the interior was made from ribbed material to make sure the vest was comfortable to wear when deployed in the heat of Afghanistan. The Mark IV also had the addition of a cummerbund, which allowed the wearer to add 2 small armour plates to their sides, for added side and rear protection. The Mark IV Osprey vest proved to be a highly effective body armour system, with numerous cases of them saving the lives of soldiers appearing in the headlines. One instance involved Gunner Carl Jordan, of the 7th Parachute Regiment Royal Horse Artillery, who was manning an observation post when he was hit in the chest by a bullet. Being knocked to the ground, Gunner Jordan radioed for a medic, who immediately arrived on the scene to attend to the gunner's wound. However, on checking him over, the medic realised Jordan hadn't been hit, but rather his Mark IV Osprey body armour had taken the brunt of the bullet. Although it gained a high reputation for being effective, the Mark IV was an incredibly bulky body armour system that some soldiers felt restricted their movement too much. Others suffered lower body injuries as a result of the sheer weight of the body armour when used alongside their other pieces of equipment such as rifle and Bergen. Nevertheless, the Mark IV Osprey body armour went on to serve the British Army for 6 years, until it was replaced by the Virtus Scalable Tactical Vest in 2016, which has taken up the role for being the main body armour system in use with the British Army.